few results to announce. Okay, so I wound up taking the flat bow with the recurved tips, and you saw how I had the tip trussed up like a Thanksgiving turkey so I could heat that wood with a heat shield and then actually judge how much bend I have with that indicator stick, and it worked out nicely. The indicator stick swung up to a specified amount that was guesswork, and it turned out okay, so it's centered. Everything is hunky-dory. So my next operation was putting some rawhide on the tips, and worked out pretty spiffy like. And I don't know, you'll see it on the other side. This edge went right up there, and so there's a little asymmetry. This is what I was shooting for on this one. Nice seam right down there, and then nice seam down there too. I took the gauze wrapping off just to check, because at this point I could heat them up and then pull them off and redo it if I had a bunch of wrinkles. Because when you're taking a flat sheet and you're putting it on a curve and then wrapping it around, your chances of getting a wrinkle are up there. In fact, full disclosure, got a minor wrinkle right there that may work out when it shrinks. It hasn't shrunk yet, so I'm going to go with that. You know, it's nice, and it'll continue to shrink down. Bond, bloop, bloop, bloop. How I go about it, and this goes into a viewer question here. Titebond 3 sinew backing. I really like hide glue for the simple fact that if I'm hide glue sinew backing, or I'm sticking these on here, which I don't just soak in water to loosen them up. I've got a weak hide glue mixture that the rawhide is soaking in. So it's almost like on a nicely sized surface, it's almost like contact cement. You almost don't even need to wrap stuff, rawhide with gauze, because you do things right, which I've done it a few times. Stick it down there and boink, it grabs. And then I can take the gauze, why not? Redundancy here. Wrap it around and then pull it off, and it won't stick. If I was to slap, I hate that word, it sounds sloppy, but not necessarily when you're sinew backing and stuff. You're slopping stuff around. It's just the way of the world. If that was Titebond, I probably would not be able to get that gauze off. Hide glue works a little different. Sinew back a bow, wait a few minutes, gauze it, pull the gauze off cleanly. Probably not so much with Titebond 3. See, I'm kind of going into the viewer question about how do you back a bow with Titebond 3? Paraphrasing here. I don't know what you would wrap a sinew back bow if you were to wrap it, which wrapping isn't necessarily necessary all the time. What you'd wrap it with to keep that Titebond from gluing to the wrap. Maybe inner tubes, cut strips. The rubber probably wouldn't stick. But anyway, my experiences backing sinew back bow with Titebond 3, 0. Never done it. So what can I tell you about it? I can tell you generally that it works really well. People use it and it's waterproof. That's all I know about it. Okay. Just like the rawhide, to make things sticky by imbuing glue into a dried substance, so when it absorbs it, it's got glue inside of it. Works the same way with sinew. When I soak sinew fibers, I'm soaking it in a weak hide glue mixture. I never soak it in just water. But you can't do that with Titebond 3, and Titebond 3 sinew backing works. So you want to get those fibers to stretch out, so then they kind of shrink back, and it's not like they double in length. I think it's like 3-4% maybe. Don't quote me on that, but that's just kind of a rough estimate and what I've heard on the mean streets of Rogers City. That when you soak it, it increases 3% and then it comes back. And so soaking is kind of necessary. I suppose you could just put tight bond on your bow and then just put the dry fibers on it. But you're not getting the benefit of, if you put dried fibers on them, you get a benefit. I'm just, I'm devil's advocate here. They're soaking in the tight bond, so there's tight bond in that material, and then it'll bond really, really well. If you soak the fibers, you can't really soak them in tight bond. I don't know the chemistry of it. Can you mix tight bond 3 with enough water, to make it watery, and will it still work? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But generally speaking, tight bond backers will, correct me if I'm wrong, soak them in water to get them loose, glue them to the surface, and then they'll shrink up a little bit, which is good with sinew. And you've got a nicely backed bow. I can't tell you. I can expound forever on sinew backing with hide glue and wrapping with this stuff. Making the bent tab tips that bend up, sinewing them so they're strong as all get outs, and then wrapping them with rawhide, and then having them so the rawhide jams in there so this string groove would still be there even if you rawhide it. That I can do because I've done it a lot. Tight bond backing, not so much. My advice in this world where you can just Google information, you can just go to YouTube. How do I do this? And people, me included, generally, now we're starting to get away with just experimenting and doing stuff at home without any outside help and figuring things out and messing stuff up and learning from our mistakes. We're all guilty of that now. We all phones in our pocket, What is the definition of envoy? But we must continue just experiment, try to figure stuff out on our own. So I would suggest my tight bond 3 sinew backers to be, maybe make a small bow, something serviceable, 48 inches, narrow, kind of like a gull wing, just maybe a D bow, maybe not invest the time to shape it and fire harden it. Just make a nice serviceable bow, small, so you're only using like 4 tendons, not a huge investment in time. Smear some hide glue or tight bond 3 on there, stick the fibers down there, let it dry and see what happens. Did it work? What did I learn from that? How would I do things differently? And continue our use of just doing crap and seeing how it happens, how it works out. Because trust me, you're starting from the beginning, like all of us, we wanted to make a beautiful bow the first time out. How'd that work out for you, Charles? But still be willing to do that. But speaking of this, okay, this is good. The string will be able to slide up and down this a lot easier if this was sinewed. This discrepancy between this thing and this going all the way to the top will be kind of hidden because I am me. And there's probably going to be some painted design work or whatever on it. You won't notice it. You're not even going to think about it if I didn't tell you, Drew. I'm thinking, this is just a hypothesis, an untested theory kind of a thing. That, see, I had to twist that tip to line things up. And is this the tip? I don't know. It's got a little wiggle in it. So there's some unbalanced forces here that might make it want to go back to whence it came. Not centered. This is probably going to act like a shear web that'll give it some torsional stability. If I was to wrap this with sinew, no added torsional stability. The rawhide, yes, torsional stability. So it'll probably keep that tip probably in its position with resisting the twist. Got it? Shear web, that's your engineering term for today. Torsional stability is the second. term that you need to learn. Okay, so I've got this. I'm pretty darn pleased. I may or may not even wrap it because this stuff is stuck down nicely. Love hide glue. But I'm not going to do the rawhide on either side of the handle. Hey, all it can do is help keep that sinew down. And this is a stressed bow. And I'm not going to do the mid limb stabilizing rawhide. And I might do two separate ones, giving some space. So look at, there's, that back is supported. And when it's bending, all it's trying to do is pull apart. It's not trying to pull up or whatever. So it'll be a very structurally sound bow, which is nice. I like structurally sound. But I'm not going to do that until I'm assured 150% that the tillering is done. I don't need to now, because when I bend it, there's no urge for the sinew to pop up or delaminate. You got that? Because it's just under tension and it actually is trying to force it down to the bow. So I'm not worried about that. I can pull it back with no regard. But I do like the idea of reinforcing wraps. I just do. Why not? Why not? And as you get to the center, oh wait, doesn't matter. What the heck? But I want to make sure it's absolutely the way I want it before I put those on, because I don't want to have to sand them off. It's going to be, it's like one of those things. All honesty, I'm looking at this thing. It's been taking me forever to do. And it's like, okay. But now that it's starting to come together and all the details are working out, it's really starting to turn into a kick-ass bow. And once I get this thing completely finished, I get that handle on there and I've got these stabilizing wraps, and there's no fear that like any delamination or any problems with this thing. Yeah, it's a cool bow. Unfortunately, I've made endless loop strings before, but I'm not good at it. That's really what this needs. Those strands of B50 or B55, and Browning and then the other company. What's the difference between B50 and B55? Not much. I like working with B50 as a 2-ply reverse twisted string maker because it's waxy right off the roll. B55 doesn't seem to be as waxy. So when you're doing this, you got the little ends that are flying around and the cats are trying to get them and they're getting all twisted up, so you can't just do this. You have to then kick it. In B50, I can just go and then just over and over on a long string and it doesn't get tangled up. But I don't think that there's any, because it's made out of the same stuff, any less stretch in one or the other. If I did a 2-ply reverse twisted string, naturally more bouncy. If I did it out of fast flight, I probably wouldn't get that slump in the string that I'm getting with this. Again, a huge initial draw weight because reflexed and curve, and it's like, maybe it's just a haunted bow. Maybe it's like, I'm going to be a great bow, but I'm just going to cause you all sorts of fits. That I'll string it, and then that string will just go snap. I've made some heavy ass bows. I made a 175-pound hickory south bow once that I sold to a guy, and I'd never had that issue. Again, the bow's got its own mind, where I'll string it and then I'll add another strand to it. I've got 14 strand for this. I'll do a 16 strand and see if that gives it any less stretch. But yeah, it's not going easy. It's not going easy. That is all. I'm going to walk to the store. It's a beautiful day and my knee works.